Hey, what's up, guys? This is Cody the Coin Raptor, and in today's video, I want to talk about GBTC, or Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. I want to go over what it is. I want to talk about my thoughts and feelings on the subject. I want to cover the pros and the cons and see where GBTC could be heading in the future. But before we get to that, be sure to subscribe, be sure to hit that like button, and be sure to share this video. So GBTC, Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, is up a whopping 343% over the last year. Now compare this to Bitcoin, which is up about 160%. We can see here that there is a significant difference between the Bitcoin price appreciation and GBTC's price appreciation, even though many investors use GBTC as a substitute for actually owning Bitcoin. I want to go ahead and touch upon this. I want to talk about what GBTC is, and I want to talk about the pros and the cons. So first, GBTC is part of Grayscale, which is a publicly traded company that offers certain products specializing in digital assets such as Bitcoin and such as Ethereum. Now, the whole goal of GBTC is to give investors that don't have any sort of knowledge of Bitcoin and don't want to buy Bitcoin themselves some exposure to the Bitcoin market. And the whole point of this is to basically try and track the BTC market prices. All right, so Grayscale actually has all this stuff on their website. Definitely recommend you guys check it out. They are managed by the SEC, so they're a publicly traded company. They have significant, though, I'll say for GBTC, and we're going to cover the pros and cons later. They have a significant management fee of about 2% annually. Okay. Now, if you go through and you look at the Grayscale products, you'll see here that they have the ticker here, GBTC. They're listed over the counter, OTC, and they'll also list their performance and basically how much Bitcoin they own per share. So they actually go out and they purchase Bitcoin, they hold Bitcoin, and they use Coinbase as actually the custody of those Bitcoins. So GBTC works together with Coinbase. Coinbase basically has custody of the Bitcoin itself, but Grayscale owns the Bitcoin. So if there's any confusion whatsoever of how this kind of works, GBTC and Grayscale, they do not actually custody the Bitcoin themselves. It's actually Coinbase. So GBTC has approximately 0.0008953 Bitcoin per share. And if you were to actually take this and multiply it by the shares outstanding, you would get that they own about 619,000 Bitcoin. And if you don't want to do the math, all you have to do is go over here to CoinGlass, and you can see what Grayscale's investment holdings are. You have their total holdings, 619,000 Bitcoin, and the price per share, as well as what they call the premium rate. Okay, so this is really important. When we start to talk about GBTC, we have to understand the fact that GBTC actually trades to a premium with Bitcoin itself. And by that I mean that when Bitcoin goes up, GBTC doesn't necessarily go up. And right now, if you'd taken all the Bitcoin that they currently own, the 619,000, and you multiply it by the current market price, you would get a price that is less than the actual price of GBTC if you took the GBTC price and multiplied it by the number of shares outstanding. So it actually trades at a premium, a negative premium to that GBTC price. Now, if we actually take a look at on CoinGlass, they have a whole nice little chart here of the total holdings for GBTC, and comparing this to the Bitcoin price, and you can see here that it peaked here at about February 2021. That's kind of during the last bull market for Bitcoin, and since then the total holdings has gone down, and the reason for that is because of the annual fees that are deducted by Grayscale. Now, if you actually go and you take a look at the chart below that, you can see that premium rate that I was talking about, a history of the premium rate, and we can see here that it's actually been all over the place. If you go all the way back to the inception of the fund, it actually had a premium rate of 19%. So GBTC was trading at a premium to Bitcoin when it was first introduced. Then if we go ahead and take a look at the bull markets that we've seen for Bitcoin, we've seen it go all the way as high as almost 100%, 132% back in August of 2017. So it was basically trading more than double the current Bitcoin price. And if we go and we take a look at the let's say 2020, December of 2020, that had decreased all the way down to about 31%. So where is that premium right now? If we go ahead and we zoom in a little bit, we can see that the premium is about 5%. Now, if we look at where it was at the start of the year, we can actually go over here and look at what a tremendous discount it had before then, about negative 45%. So it had about a 45% discount to the Bitcoin price, and that discount has been narrowing ever since last year, ever since the beginning of this year. It's been narrowing all the way down to about negative 5%. So that kind of gives us an idea of how Bitcoin trades, or how GBTC trades with Bitcoin. And the reason why this has actually been going up is because of the fact that there's been rampant speculation that there is a Bitcoin spot ETF that's going to be coming. Now, that would reduce, hopefully, the premium for GBTC to Bitcoin. One of the things that Grayscale is going to be trying to do right now is they're actually trying to convert their GBTC fund over to a Bitcoin spot ETF, and that would eliminate the premium that GBTC currently faces. And the reason for that is because the ETF itself would have to actually own the Bitcoin and custody the Bitcoin, or they would have to have a custody for somebody else, most likely Coinbase, and those would trade basically in line with Bitcoin with no sort of lag or no premium whatsoever. And you would see this premium here disappear. So many people bought Bitcoin this year, seeing that there is a premium given to GBTC, and there basically shouldn't be, especially if there's a spot ETF. That premium would go to zero. They've seen it as kind of like an arbitrage opportunity. If, for instance, it's down, the premium's down negative 18%, and you think it should be zero, then you would make 18% basically on your money. Okay, so this is really important to understand when it comes to GBTC. Now, GBTC is a very popular holding for some companies, such as ARK. Now, ARK has actually been buying quite a bit of GBTC in the past. You can see here that the number of shares they've owned have gone up pretty large here. From 2020, they started buying it. They've kind of peaked at about 2021. And since then, they've been actually selling a significant number of GBTC. And right now, it's only about a 0.52% weighting in their current funds. So this is something to consider. They have an ARKW currently. But this is an example of, I think, profit taking from Cathie Wood and Cathie's ARK. But there could also wind up being a rebalancing going on. They do tend to rebalance their portfolios quite a bit based on their own requirements. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the annual fees. So Axios actually had a report here that came out and said that over the lifetime of GBTC, investors have paid $1.2 billion for GBTC and $387 million for ETH, which is their Ethereum fund, over the basically at this point about 5 years. So investors who have actually bought these funds have paid well over $1 billion in those annual fees. Now, you have to think to yourself, is 2% worth it? Do I want to pay 2% annually or not? Or does not work for me? And that's actually fairly high when you compare it to a lot of exchange traded funds, which kind of trade usually under an expense ratio of under 1%. It's like 0.5 normally. And you look at GBTC and it's, north of, or it's around 2%. You have to ask yourself if that's actually worth it or not. Now, I want to go ahead and talk about the price itself of GBTC. Now, I've laid an overlay of Bitcoin with GBTC, and you can see that it trades basically in line with Bitcoin, very similar. When Bitcoin goes up, GBTC tends to go up, and when Bitcoin goes down, it also tends to go down. Now, I also went ahead and put in the all-time high. We have a marker right up here for the all-time high of about 55 or so, about $55.38 for GBTC. Now, if Bitcoin were to go back to its all-time high, no doubt that GBTC would also go back to its all-time high, and that gives us an upside of about 50% currently for GBTC. So if you bought it right now, you'd make 50% on your money if Bitcoin went back to all-time highs. So this is something that definitely keep in mind. Now, again, that's not a guarantee that Bitcoin will go back to all-time highs, but that is something that I strongly believe when it comes to Bitcoin. Not financial advice, do your own research. But we can see here that GBTC has been on an absolute tear. I said at the start of the video, it's up 343% in about a year, and that's borne out here in the charts, okay? So I want to go ahead and give you guys a quick summary as well as my opinions on the pros and cons of GBTC versus actually holding Bitcoin. So is it better than Bitcoin? Well, there are some significant advantages to GBTC, and that is that it allows for traditional investors to get exposure to Bitcoin without holding it. This is really important here because traditional investors, people who just buy and sell stocks on their brokerages, they can go out and just buy GBTC. They don't have to actually custody the Bitcoin. They don't have to go and buy the Bitcoin straight from those potentially unregulated private exchanges. And so that's a concern for some of these traditional investors. Not to mention that, but the company itself, Grayscale, is actually regulated by the SEC. So this is also incredibly important because, you know, we talk about exchanges that have had very little oversight when we talk about crypto, like FTX, saying that they have a certain amount of money or a certain amount of liquid funds compared to illiquid funds. Now, the SEC actually has to regulate these companies, and they have to go through audits, and they have to follow generally accepted accounting principles. So this is deemed a lot safer by traditional investors than going and buying Bitcoin by itself. They safely store the Bitcoin, again, through Coinbase as a custodian. And then you can buy GBTC at your traditional brokerages, Robinhood. You can go through Interactive Brokers or Charles Schwab or whatever your brokerage is and just buy them directly. And then both for a pro and for a con, it trades at a discount to Bitcoin. So we said it trades at a 5% Bitcoin, 5% premium to Bitcoin. And that can both be seen as a pro because you could potentially make 5% if you think that Bitcoin spot ETF will be approved. But it can also be a con as well because if it's not approved, that means that gap is going to widen and you're going to have an even larger gap between what Bitcoin is trading at and what GBTC is trading at. So the other parts of our cons, again, not actually Bitcoin. And this is something, see, personally, I would always prefer to own Bitcoin as opposed to GBTC for a number of reasons. But just pointing out that this is not Bitcoin, but it does allow you to get exposure to Bitcoin. There are high management fees, we said earlier, about 2% or so annually. And it is in every way inferior to a Bitcoin spot ETF. However, Grayscale is trying to get approval for a Bitcoin spot ETF. If we do see that approval, then most likely Grayscale will get that for GBTC and it will convert over to a spot ETF in the future. So in summary, I do believe that in some cases GBTC is better than Bitcoin, especially for traditional investors who don't want to go through and buy the actual Bitcoin themselves and then have to custody it. But personally, I prefer to buy Bitcoin and custody it myself as opposed to letting somebody else handle it. That way I always feel safe and secure in the knowledge that it's mine and I own it at all times and I have ultimate control over my Bitcoin. But your mileage may vary. Let me know what you guys think below. Leave a comment and I will catch you guys in the next video.